Hey, welcome to the Mount Diablo Astronomical Society. We have a special general meeting this evening. Yes, I pressed record. Am I recording?
Yes,
I,
you are.
I am. Oh, thank God somebody knows what's going on. Thank you. All right. So a little different meeting this evening. We're going to be sharing all of our members who agreed to share this evening their eclipse chase stories, either from last month or the last several years or decades. So I'm really excited about the presentations tonight. Just a quick reminder that I do have cards available if you need them for the public astronomy nights. See if this thing's working again. All right. We've also got some upcoming star parties. These are all on our website. So if you have any questions, all the information is there on our calendar. So we've got a couple in July, August, October, and our Society Observing Night is coming up on June 8th. And then the next Public Astronomy Night is on the 22nd of June. Okay, is David here? Okay. So David may have gone to the bathroom. So I'm going to have Marnie come up. I have these little, oh, is David here? Oh, David. All right. So we're going to start off our eclipse chase stories. David, come on up to this podium here. So I have these funky little microphones on a stick, on a popsicle stick. When you talk, just make sure the little blue light is towards your light, okay? Or towards your mouth.
The little blue light does what?
Yeah. So that you'll just put it to your mouth and talk like that.
Oh, this is my mic?
Yeah, like this. Yeah.
Like this.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So David's going to tell us his eclipse story.
Okay. I'm David Seaborg. I'm an evolutionary biologist and a member of both the East Bay Astronomical Society and the Mount Diablo Astronomical Society. And my wife and I went to Texas and planned in advance to get as close to the Mexican border as possible to be able to see the eclipse for maximum length of time without going to Mexico, which my wife was afraid to go to for, I think, probably good reason. And besides, you wouldn't gain that many seconds going all the way down to Mexico. So we were going to be near Eagle Pass, and I thought it'd be kind of interesting to see what's going on at the border, but my wife didn't want to do that. But that was the plan. And then my wife looked at the weather report, and that area where we were actually going to go is a place called Naval Base. It's actually a town in Texas near the border. It was all cloudy, so we drove the night before quite far so we'd be ready to get up, and went to a place east of Dallas called Clarksville. Nice little town, allowed for some jokes about we got the last train to Clarksville. And so they had a town square where there were a lot of people gathered. And they had a monument to fallen Confederate soldiers there. So it was the true South. And I had a delightful time talking to about a 10-year-old, very nerdy young boy who spoke very loudly, thick glasses, a real classical nerd, but he was really bright. He knew a lot of astronomy and asked me all about eclipses and how many eclipses I'd seen. Like this was about my fifth one. So that was a great experience. Then came the first contact, which was clouded out by clouds. And so we missed the first few seconds, and then came the sun. And it was very lucky because I knew that a telescope is making it too large. And so I brought my binoculars with coverings over so I could see the eclipse with protection. But usually with binoculars, there's a place to secure them against so you don't shake. There was nothing at all in the town square that I could find, and I didn't have a tripod. The luck was there were lots of astronomers there with binoculars with the adequate protection, and they were very generous about allowing me to look. So I saw the early phases, and I saw all of the, except for the first contact, pretty much with just a few clouds. Sometimes even the clouds covering it was very dramatic because it didn't cover it completely, and it made for a very nice effect. And then came second contact, the main part, and it got cloudy. And we were clouded out, and everyone in the square was depressed because you've only got 4 minutes and 20 seconds in Clarksville. And then after 10 or 15 seconds of this, boom, the sun appears, everyone cheers. And that made it so dramatic because I thought we were going to miss it. And then suddenly we get to see it, and it made it all the more spectacular. So I got views of it through people's binoculars and with my own binoculars and with the naked eye. And it was interesting because this is the 11 year sunspot cycle. It's at its maximum. So you would expect a big corona and even a lot of prominences and maybe a coronal mass ejection if we're really lucky. But of course, that fluctuates within the 11-year cycle. So the day of the eclipse, the sun wasn't very active. The corona was small. I saw one prominence at 5 o'clock. The smaller corona was still beautiful. Eclipses are just so spiritual. They affect the whole body in such beauty. So it was just wonderful with that small corona and the prominence and the time. And then I saw third contact. Then I saw the rest of partial phases. It did get dark during the full contact, and there were a few swallows. And since I was in the middle of a town square, I didn't see any other animal life changes. Then the fourth contact, the sun came about 5 minutes before it and blocked it until the end of the eclipse. So interestingly, of the 4 contacts, I only saw third contact. However, it was a spectacular experience in spite of that because I saw it for so long and for so much. Thank you.
All right. And when you're done speaking, you can just leave the mic here on the podium for the next speaker. Okay, so our mama, Marnie, is going to be speaking next.
So I have to look at the blue line?
Yeah, just point it right at your, sure we got this.
Okay. Okay, is that working? Yes, that's working. Okay, very good.
Okay.
Okay, first slide, thank you.
So you can advance.
Oh, okay. How do I advance?
Yep, so that'll go forward and that'll go back.
Okay, very good, very good. So I've got my hands full. Not good. All right. Well, my talk is a little different than those kinds of experiences, but that's okay because our first speaker alluded to what I'm going to talk about. And why do we chase eclipses, specifically total eclipses? I've been to 4 total eclipses, 1 annular, and a bunch of partials. But when you chase a total eclipse, there's the real reason. You see cool places that you probably wouldn't go to otherwise. You get to meet people that are all interested in and curious about astronomy. So you're with your buds, you know. But there is a real reason why we chase total eclipses. I'll talk about the different places. Do I have to point it at that?
I'll go next.
Thank you. Okay, our first one was in 1991. This is my husband right there in the second row. And we were in Mexico off the coast of Baja on a ship, first one. So unique place, never been there before. So, hey, that was good. Now, what about, okay, click. Then these were our dinner mates at all of our meals, and we got to meet them, and we became longtime friends. So you get to meet some really cool people. Interestingly enough, these guys' names were Tom and Tom. It could be Tom and Tom, but I don't know. Anyway, but now, you know, as with all these people that are there, practically everyone is a kindred spirit, right? But not quite everyone, as you can see. So that was our first one. Both the first two had astronomy experts. Now, this is our second one. This was in 1999. Again, we were on a ship in the Black Sea. This was part of a 1-month trip from Sweden down to Greece. So, and as I said, there were a bunch of astronomy experts. Go ahead and change. And on this particular trip, Bob Berman was our astronomy expert. Now, why he's faced away from the place that everybody else is looking, I have no idea. You can make up your own idea for that one. Yeah, maybe he's looking for the shadow, right? Our third one, now the third and fourth one, I ended up being the astronomy expert because we were on a tour of Egypt with the Astronomical Society of the Pacific, who by this time I was actually working for. So, and we were out in the desert of Egypt, about a mile from the Libyan border. It was not a good time to be near the Libyan border, but we had lots of protection. And the Bedouins, go ahead, one more. The Bedouins out there had set up tents for us. They had tents all over the desert for all different groups. Each group had their own tent. And you might notice red carpets leading in. And look at these chairs. These are not folding chairs, folks. They were even serving us tea out of china cups. Yeah, so you can click and show a close-up of the red carpets and all that. So lots of places, people, right? My last one, our last one was the 2017 in Oregon. I did not go over to Texas. And we were asked to volunteer. Oregon was asking for help. And so I was in charge of the whole weekend, the programs for the whole weekend next. And these were several of the programs that I was leading over the weekend. It was fun. I mean, we had a great time. This is just one of them where I was showing how to, why the moon seems to change shape. So they were understanding what the moon phases in the cycle of the moon and why there's eclipses and so on. Okay, so we've talked about people and places, but the real reason, okay, let's go to just go blank, because this is where, this is that feeling that you are somewhere else. That's, for me, that's the real reason to chase total eclipses. I had a friend in a walking group, and before we went to Oregon, she was going to go to Oregon, and she had a friend, a relative, who lived within about a mile of the line where if you go over it, you'll see the eclipse. If you stay back behind it, you'll only get like 98%. Isn't that enough? She said. I figured that was going to be your reaction. Yeah. Of course, I told her no. And so to convey the feeling of this, I just wanted to read the travel log entry that I wrote after the 1999 eclipse. And it doesn't matter where you are or which eclipse you're going to, but this, for me, captured the day. On the day of the eclipse, remember we were on the Black Sea on a ship. On the day of the eclipse, as the people, telescopes, cameras assembled on the aft deck, the captain cut the engines to reduce vibration. The sea was calm, the sky was a clear blue, and the hot, damp air, no movement. We all periodically checked the progress of the moon across the sun, playing with projecting crescent images of the sun through pinholes, binoculars, even straw hats. In the last several minutes before totality, the day became visibly darker. Shadows crisp, so crisp, and the air cooler as a breeze came up out of nowhere. I watched with growing anticipation as the bright crescent, grew thinner and thinner until just one spot of sunlight was left. As it winked out, the sun's image exploded in a burst of gauzy filaments emanating from all around where just a second ago there was nothing. Tiny tongues of red surrounded the black central disk. At the moment of totality, all other sights, all sounds, all people completely disappeared from my awareness. The sight of totality transcends any logic, any knowledge, and any understanding. This glorious sight in one moment dropped me into another world where light, color, sound, and feel were completely foreign. I stood watching in stunned silence. After about a minute, I was aware of my breathing again. My reason returned just enough to allow me to force my gaze from the spectacle to find Venus and then Mercury. I lowered my view to check out the horizon and see the reddish glow all around me. After a few moments, I picked up the binoculars again, turned my attention to the streamers and prominences surrounding the eerie black of the moon's disk, and stared in quiet wonder. Sooner than I could imagine, a bright spot of sun reappeared on the right side of the blackness, and we were once again bathed in sunlight. In an instant, I became aware of the voices, the faces, the ship, my feet on the deck, and I knew I had returned to Earth. It was over. The effect, though, was still with me as a most intense afterglow, a powerful, hypnotic, unforgettable experience. Now, after the August 2017 eclipse, one gentleman came up to me just so excited after totality. And he said, "It was wondrous and fleeting. And when it was over, I wanted to do it again and again." I felt like a child who had experienced their first amusement park ride. I wanted to jump back in line and to experience the event all over again. Well, I too hope that to have the opportunity for at least one more ride.
Thank you, Marnie. Oh my gosh. Who else got goosebumps with that? Thank you. All right, we've got Jim coming up next. Let me see if I can get this thing working.
Marnie, that was nice. My first eclipse was the 2017. Okay. And it was in Oregon, and that was very spectacular. And I said, that's a way to go. I've got to see some more. For the 24 eclipse, I took my daughter Lisa and grandson Alan with me to visit my childhood home in Western Kentucky. It's a late 1800s house that has fallen on hard times since my family sold it. As you can see, the present owner doesn't allow anybody to go in and look at what we used to live in. So, and we stayed in there in Kentucky in a bed and breakfast that had been the home of a previous lieutenant governor of Kentucky. The host grandchildren welcomed Alan and played Candy Crush with him. From there, on Sunday, April 7th, we reconnoitered and researched our Plan A viewing site in Jackson, Missouri. I got good help out of the April Astronomy magazine and Google Earth to find the right place. Jackson's about halfway between Memphis, Tennessee, and St. Louis, Missouri, and it sits right on the center line of totality. On Sunday, the day with light rain, our 75-mile trip from Clinton, Kentucky, crossed the Ohio River into the southern tip of Illinois at Cairo, through wooded river bottomlands and across the Mississippi River. And I've included this second picture to just remind people how mighty the Mississippi really is. It's over a mile wide in some places. From there, the sloping 42-acre Brookside Park in Jackson is one of 3 city parks hosting eclipse events. It featured a Veterans Memorial shown there, athletic fields, playgrounds, picnic tables, and restrooms. So we were doing finding our site. This looked like a good place to be. And then we decided we'd try several alternate sites. We needed Plan B because who knew how many million people were going to come to the totality areas. And so then we checked out sites and parking areas and then returned to Clinton after visiting and sampling the local barbecue, Mary Jane, and exploring Horseshoe Lake, a wildlife preserve on the way. On the road into the lake, we were fortunate enough to see a bald eagle soaring over the road right in front of us, about 25 feet off the ground. On Monday, we returned to Jackson, accompanied by ominous clouds and fog in the river valleys. These gave way to beautiful blue skies with some wispy cirrus clouds as we climbed up out of the valleys. On arrival, the park was buzzing with activity. A country singer and DJ was entertaining the crowd. 130 parking spaces were full. People were unloading and setting up their equipment. We had food trucks and porta potties in place. We unloaded our gear and found alternate parking nearby and settled in to wait. There's plenty to do when you're doing that. We set up our little sunspotter telescope, as you can see here, and you can take a look at it later. But it casts a nice picture that several people can look at one time. You don't have to have your eyes shaded. We attached cell phone filters and activated the applications on the cell phones. And we could see that there were 2 readily visible sunspots on the projection on the sunspotter scope. After reviewing my photographs from the 2017 eclipse, I realized there'd be ample pictures of professional grade available. So I concentrated on the local scene. A wide variety of optical aids, and there's different telescopes. Some of you may recognize them. They ranged everywhere from 30, 40 millimeter to 4 or 5 inch, maybe bigger. I think we had some solar scopes as well. set up for hydrogen alpha and who knows what all. But then we also had people and dogs and kids spinning their hula hoops and people tossing frisbees, playing cornhole and chatting with their neighbors. As first contact approached, more attention started being turned to the sky with glasses and filtered binoculars. After first contact, there it is in my sun spotter. People began projecting images from colanders. The little kid loved it. Let's see, she's actually active in the one the other one. She dances around while her brother's making a picture. And we had another young lady who was happy to see the colander projecting images. Pretty soon we could see darkness approaching like a storm cloud from the southwest. Birds began roosting in the trees. Breezes died down. It became noticeably cooler. Then the Bailey beads, diamond ring came along. However, they weren't captured in this photograph or this picture. It's a speeded up second contact totality and third contact. But it shows pretty good. I want to run that again. And if you look, you'll see the south. You're looking at 5 o'clock on the new. Yeah, there it goes. When it goes total, look at 5 o'clock and you'll see see the little spot, the red spots there. That was visible. In a wide field view, we see a substantial corona around the sun with Jupiter in the lower right. You can see the small dot there to the lower right. And to the southeast, we could see daylight on the side. It shows darker in the second phase of that little video there. It was dark over us, but you could see the sun on the sides 50 miles away, like a glow from a non-compliant city. Our 4 minutes and 9.5 seconds of totality was all too soon over, and growing dawn to the southwest brought third contact to cheers and applause of the spectators. They all got really excited about it. Then it was over, and people started packing up and leaving. They were within a minute or two, they were heading for their cars. And then we have one final clip that summarizes everything. Let's see if there it goes. You can see the two sunspots on it, and it's moving right along.
Who did the video for you?
Pardon?
Who did the video?
I'm not sure who did that. We were sharing pictures and somebody had it. There he's going to get the second spot just about the time it turns white. There you go. And that one didn't have any corona. There it comes out again. Okay. In the eclipse aftermath, the road out of town was bumper to bumper for hours. It took our grandson Alan 6.5 hours to travel 120 miles to the St. Louis airport on Interstate 55. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Okay, Bennett, we've got you next.
Okay.
That pointing toward you.
Is this working? Yeah. Okay. Hi. This April eclipse would be my first total eclipse. So I was pretty excited about it. And I was especially excited because I hadn't gone to the 2017 eclipse and I was still kicking myself about that. And I talked to some of my friends who had gone, and they said that despite the several-hour traffic jam leaving it, that it was totally worth it. So I definitely plan to go on to see this one in April. So, but when I started to make plans for it, I discovered maybe I was a little bit late getting going for it. I first thought about going to Mazatlan, and then I really couldn't get a flight. And then I thought about booking some place in Texas Hill Country, which is also really tough. And so I finally signed on with a group called Special Interest Tours. And Special Interest Tours had an astronomy with her. Is Bob Berman, who Marnie just mentioned.
Oh my gosh.
So it seemed like a can't miss kind of event. And so I figured I didn't have to worry any more than that. The tour really was not just going to the eclipse, it was going around Texas. So we started in Houston, then we went to NASA, and we got to talk with an astronaut. Then we took a long bus ride to San Antonio, and we saw the Riverwalk in San Antonio. And then we kind of geared up to get ready for our event by taking a bus ride to Florence, Texas. And okay, so here's our flush destination for Florence, Texas. We were looking forward to that. And it was a winery, and it was April, and Texas was really beautiful. The hill country was beautiful. And that kind of through there, full of wildflowers. And this was the expected layout for what we expected to sit in awe and watch the eclipse. However, despite Mr. Berman told me he'd never missed an eclipse, this is what we got. And I have a little video. Will that show? Okay. That went
Yep, all right. So the video is not.
Video didn't show. Okay, well, the video sees kind of what you're seeing. And it did get a little dark, and a couple cows went moo, if that was anything. And but we saw maybe, we'd call it generously, maybe 4 seconds of the total eclipse, where there's supposed to be about 4 minutes. And so for some reason, I don't quite understand. The group seemed to take it in stride. And I really have not, at this moment, come to grips with kind of my disappointment. And I'm kind of here at the meeting to kind of see how I feel about it still, and whether I'll try to go see another one. And I'm kind of on the border still. I would certainly like to see one, but I'm not sure exactly how far I'll go, or maybe a little more flexibility in how I approach it. Okay, that's what I've got.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing. That was great. Okay, we've got Donna up next. She's on Zoom, so let me find her so I can highlight her for everybody. All right. And Donna, I'll have you unmute.
I'm unmuted. Can you hear me?
Okay. And then can everybody see Donna highlighted? Oop, not now. Okay. All right, Donna, would you like me to advance the slide?
Yes, the first one would be good. Thank you.
All right.
Can everyone hear me okay?
Yep.
Well, I've been sort of attached to astronomy for a long time. I don't know a lot about it, but my dear husband, Lou, who many of you knew, he was interested in astronomy since he was a small child, and he had many copies of Sky and Telescope magazine. Excuse me. And I was leafing through one of his magazines in 1997 and ran across a little ad that caught my eye. We had done a lot of traveling, but we had never been on a cruise. And this ad was for a total eclipse cruise on my birthday on February 26, 1998. And so I told him we had never been on a cruise. I said, if we ever go on a cruise, it has to be this one. And it didn't take a lot to convince him. excuse me, got a frog in my throat. And so we signed up and flew to Miami and then to Puerto Rico, and then had a couple of days in San Juan that we enjoyed a lot. And then one of the interesting things we did on Puerto Rico was a bus trip to Arecibo, where we had a very interesting tour there. And on the bus to going to Arecibo from San Juan, they showed us the movie Contact, which was kind of fun. And there was also a cave that we stopped for and on the way to Arecibo. And eventually we went to the rainforest too, which was interesting on Puerto Rico. And after we got on the ship, we heard some interesting lectures by some people who were astronomers, and we also visited Santo Domingo and saw the tomb of Columbus, and then went to Aruba and rode on a mini submarine. And unfortunately, Lou was starting to be sick with some kind of a lung infection about that time, and spent a couple of days in bed in our room, which was unfortunate, but he was able to drag himself up to the deck on Eclipse Day. And the day of the eclipse started out with cloudy skies and a lot of depressed people, but our group of astronomers had a meteorologist who worked with the ship's captain to put the ship under clear skies by the time of the eclipse. Thankfully, the captain knew that most of the 1,300 people on the ship had just come for the eclipse, and he was very cooperative. It was well worth the trip. Nothing I've seen before or since can compare with those few minutes of totality. The sky was gray. I think I have a picture of the gray sky after this one, and the totality, and the sky was gray. It never got totally dark, but there were dolphins jumping up around the ship, which was quite interesting. And the captain shut the engines down on the ship to stop the vibration for all of the astronomers and their cameras and telescopes. And it was just one of the most amazing experiences that I've ever had in my life. And I'm so glad we did it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much, Donna.
Thank you.
Okay, we've got Mike up next.
Can you hear me? Okay, go to the first slide here. So I did not go to this last totality. I actually went to Cray Elementary in Brentwood with a few other members of our club. And this is a picture I pulled off the school's public website, but they had everything coordinated really well there. They'd bring out all these classes, and they had all the glasses for them. And it would all look at the kids, would all look at the sun, and then we had a few solar scopes set up, and then they'd cycle through the scopes. And then we'd show them how to, we've seen pictures of the colanders here, but you do the same thing with your fingers on your hand, just doing this. We're showing the kids that, and they were getting all excited about it. So in between kids, and I had a hydrogen alpha scope. Not going. No, go back one. Should be. Keep going. I think those are out of order. Keep going. That one. Yeah, I had them numbered, but I guess the numbering didn't come out right.
Sorry.
So in between kids, I put my cell phone up to my scope and shot a picture, and that was about as much as we got here in this area. But if you look around the edges, you can see all the prominences. That's the same ones that showed up in totality. So you didn't really have to go to see a totality to see the prominences. That's H alpha scope. It's a lunt. It's like a 4-inch. And I just put my cell phone up there and took a quick and dirty picture. And a lot of this, when you use a cell phone, you got to have everything lined up just perfectly and square. Otherwise, you get kind of some weird stuff going on. So, so that was pretty cool. So back up to that second, back up there. So this is the 2017 eclipse up in Oregon. You go up there and if you take your equipment, you take 1,000 different pictures, and then you get them back home and you start looking at them going, what am I going to do with this? And I thought, well, I'd taken a picture of the sun right before the eclipse started. Why don't I overlay it on a picture of the corona? And when you do that, you can see some interesting things. One, you can see the magnetic lines pulling the corona into the poles of the sun, top and bottom there. And then you got the sunspots sort of lining up with the equator there. And I thought that was kind of cool looking. Let's go to, go forward one. Yeah, that one. Okay, this is from the annular eclipse. That was a few years before. I was up at the Sundial Bridge up in Northern California, and with my regular white light scope, and I took some annular eclipse images. And then I saw some images that our club member Chris Ford had taken with his hydrogen alpha. And he wasn't up there, but he was close to the center line somewhere. And so what I did is I thought, what if I combine these two images, and if I adjust the sizes just right, so get the moon is exactly the same size in each picture, and then overlay them, what you see here is that the red part is the chromosphere of the sun, and it actually lies above the photosphere, the white part of the sun that we normally see in the white light telescopes. And so this is photographic proof that, yes, indeed, the chromosphere lies above the photosphere. And so I thought that was pretty cool. I never seen anybody do that before, so I'll try it.
Amazing.
Okay, so then I had some aurora pictures here.
Woo!
Okay. Did anybody see the aurora on May 10th? Okay.
Okay, about
I say see it, you had to kind of use your imagination, because it's like looking at a nebula. Did you see it or not? And so I live in Clayton, and I had seen reports earlier in the day that that people in the aurora was visible in Florida and Texas. So I knew, and I knew as soon as it got dark, we might have a chance. So I set my camera up in the backyard, and I first started taking pictures and nothing. And I just almost went to bed. It was about 11 o'clock, and I thought I'd take one last look. And I looked, and I thought I saw a faint shaft of light in the sky. And I thought, aha, I got my camera going. Well, the camera picks up all those colors very easily, and you took some great shots of that. And so this is one of them. You see the red, and then I had hit the saturation on this a little bit, but you see you got red, and you got sort of a greenish below there. So if you check it out, the highest part of the red of the aurora is actually like almost 150 miles up in space. And the bottom part is about 60 miles, and below that is green. It's all interactions with oxygen molecules. And that one star you see up here, that's the North Star. So all this stuff is actually pretty low. And if it's that high at 100 miles, all this is very, very far away from us. But it was there. And you go to the next one I had. That was, this is another one when I first saw it. And I was taking like 15-second exposures. And, I watched for an hour. You could see stuff moving. And, it was almost, my wife was standing right next to me, but she couldn't see. She says, I just don't see anything. I see it on your camera. And I think I could see it because I'm used to looking at really faint stuff. But it was like almost there, and sometimes there was a reddish tinge. And so that's all I had.
Fantastic. Thank you, Mike. Okay, we're going to have Scott come up next. After Scott, we're going to have a 10-minute break, and then we'll get to the remaining presenters.
I don't want to hold everybody up before the break here. Can you hear me okay? Okay. So what do I, the one on the right? Okay. It works. Well, it's great to hear how many people actually went to how many different places to see this and everything. And like people have said here before, a 95% eclipse doesn't hold a candle to a 100% eclipse. I think everybody's figured that out. And Marnie, you gave a very good description of sort of the surrealistic and almost, religious experience that an eclipse can actually be. My story, like a lot of other people, starts back in 2017. This is up in a little town called Lyon, Oregon. It's about an hour outside of Salem. This is myself and my wife and my brother and his family. This was actually my brother's 67th birthday. That's one of the reasons we made this trip, to go see it. And we were just on a little tiny side street in Lyon, Oregon. And as you can see, people are out there on their driveways with food and lawn chairs and things. And one of them remarked to us that this is the biggest thing to happen on this street since the yard sale. So that shows you what sort of importance they gave to all this. So let me get this to work. And I think I'm going to need you to advance for me. So this is a picture of the 2017 one that actually my brother took, which is a pretty good photo showing the diamond ring, if you will. There we go. And that's a cow eating grass, but he ate the grass, so he left. So there isn't anything to see there. Okay. One of the things that we thought was kind of cool, because we were right on the center line of the eclipse, and we were right next to a post office there. And so the people inside the post office told us that every post office within 1,000 feet of the center line was doing these special day of the eclipse cancellations. So of course, being the nerd that I am, I thought this was pretty cool, and I sent myself a postcard of this. So when I was looking for places to go see this eclipse in 2024, like everybody else, I looked at all the NASA websites and was seeing the center line of the eclipse and trying to figure out where the right place to go was. And I ended up in this town called Herrin, Illinois. And the reason I did that, it was about a 3-hour drive from Nashville, which is where my daughter and son-in-law and two of my granddaughters live. Of course, what should have been a 3-hour drive turned out to be a 5-hour drive to get there, mostly because of traffic. Waze kept taking me off of the interstate and through these little backwater towns and such. And so I did end up in Herrin, Illinois. This is a picture of the post office. And I figured, well, I'm going to get another day of the eclipse cancellation. I'll be the only person in the world to have 2 successive ones. And I'll come back to that part of the story later. So I made it there with about 20 minutes to spare, even though the drive was 2 hours longer than I thought. 20 minutes to spare before totality. I ended up in a bank parking lot. On the way there, I passed several places along the road where there were literally hundreds of people sitting in their lawn chairs, looking up with their funny glasses on. But then when I got to downtown Herrin, which my apologies to anybody if you grew up in Herrin, it's a pretty depressing little town. I was in a bank parking lot. And so here's the bank employees out there watching. They were the only ones in this parking lot with me. I drove up. There's me with my fancy glasses, just to prove I was there. But as you can see, there's nobody else in this parking lot. Oops. There's my camera setup. Nothing too fancy, just my Canon 50 with a 200 milliliter lens and my cheap little Amazon filter on it. But it enabled me to get a few good shots. Oh, I keep jumping ahead. So this is just before totality. And I would love to tell you that some of these little dots in there are stars, but unfortunately they're not, because they would be between the moon and me. So they're just dust on the camera, some sort of artifact of my optics. And this is during totality. You can see some flares at about 3 o'clock and almost 6 o'clock. This is just at the end of totality. You can see the red sun emerging down there in the lower right-hand quadrant. And then this is just after totality. And again, we have these little spots that are, I can tell you people are too smart if I told you they were stars, but I can tell other people they're stars. Oops. And so I went over to the post office afterwards, and I said, I want another, and I showed him my postcard. I said, I understand you guys do this. The two nice ladies in the post office, and they were very nice and very chatty. They said they had never heard of it. So all I got was this lousy little sticker from them that they give to school children to prove I was there. And then driving back to Nashville that night, what should have been, again, been a 3-hour drive was a 7-hour drive because of the traffic and because I hit the most hellacious thunderstorm I had ever seen in northern Tennessee. And again, Waze was taking me off of the interstate and through all these little backwater towns. I got off the interstate in Paducah, Kentucky, got gas, got myself something to eat. And then I saw a lot of southern Kentucky and a lot of northern Tennessee. I had several friends who were at various places seeing the eclipse. I had my brother was down in Abbott, Texas, which is not too far from Austin. I had a couple of friends who were up in Dallas area, south of Dallas. I had a good friend who was in Hot Springs, Arkansas, who I actually saw for dinner the following night. I had a friend who you'll hear from in a little bit who was up near Niagara Falls. This is actually, and of course, in the day leading up to the eclipse, we were all trading messages about what the weather forecasts were and things like that. And the common wisdom, as you all know, was Texas was the place to see it. You had the best chance of clear skies. I was heading towards Heron. That was my plan A. My plan B was Jackson, Missouri, like some of you were at. But luckily, the skies parted and Heron was clear as a bell, so I had no problem. This is a picture that my brother took down in Abbott, Texas, just before totality. And there it is during totality. You can see the same flares at about 3 o'clock and 5 o'clock. So he was indeed looking at the same eclipse I was. And I think that's probably my last picture, I believe. So again, I'm glad to see how many people went to go see it. And I hope everybody's planning in 2045. I'll be in my 90s, but I plan to be up in Reading watching the next one.
Thank you so much. You guys all did amazing. Okay. So we're going to take a 7-10 minute break. So help yourself to snacks. Up next will be Bob Miner. He's going to be joining us via Zoom. If you're at home, get yourselves to the fridge and hustle on back. Jackets in the back if you ordered them.
Oh, huh?
All right, Bob, why don't you go ahead and unmute?
Okay, I am unmuted.
Okay, everybody, come on back. We got to get this show moving again. Okay, our next speaker is Bob Miner. He's going to share via Zoom.
Hello, and I'm going to share my screen, hopefully. Is that showing up okay?
Looks good.
Okay. So last month, I guess it was, seems like just yesterday, I gave a presentation on Eclipse trips and things, and Mi Ra Cheper Shupet is a phrase that we've used at many, many Eclipse. Muddy Ra, please give us clear skies. And I have to say it was not totally successful in Texas. Hearing Marnie's wonderful description of an eclipse, I was reminded of this this slide, which I stuck in at the last minute here, from 1998. My daughter is then a teenager in Curacao. Amazing, really. At one point, I just stood and looked around, everyone's spellbound looking up. The sky was so beautiful with the sun glowing, corona streaming in unearthly color, stars spread out across the ecliptic plane. It felt like there was no gravity. I think in the spirit of what Marnie was saying is. So for Texas, I'm having trouble here. Here we go. So plan A was 10 family members met in Texas at a resort right on the center line at Rio Frio. I had some not grandiose plans, but obviously fairly sophisticated photography in mind. But you'll notice the two eyepieces. What I was really wanted to concentrate on was visually watching the flash spectrum at third contact. This is something I've seen a number of times. I've filmed a number of times. And it's really a gorgeous thing. It's worth really making an effort to see if you've never seen it. The plan was to film a video at second contact of the flash, and then that filter with this. Can you see the cursor, by the way?
Yes.
Okay, this filter wheel would allow me to flip in diffraction grating in and out to either look at the spectrum or look at the white light. At Rio Frio, however, the conditions were basically this faked image, which is very accurately represented the skies that morning. Some folks were heading north, some folks were staying put. We decided, thinking of our major points from that last presentation down at the bottom, bring the family and friends, and mobility may save the day. I had assumed that mobility would not be very possible because we were on sort of back roads. But in spite of that, a family conference persuaded me to split the group up, and 6 of us got into a van and headed north. The rest stayed put, and to drive carefully north, try to enjoy the whole eclipse from first through fourth contact, even though we were on the road, stopping along the way for the partial phases, naked eye and binoculars for totality. The laptop would never get used. The 3 of the 4 cameras wouldn't get used. A video on autopilot, a video of this flash spectrum at second contact. And this was the thing I really wanted, was to see the flash at third contact. So on the way north, this is the road, not a soul in sight. We saw half a dozen and maybe a dozen cars in an hour's drive north. The expectation was that there would be, bumper to bumper traffic, but I guess because of the fact that we were really in the worst part of the clouds that day, everybody had already moved or decided just, to give up on it. So we drove north, stopping along the way a little bit to look at the partial phases. And this is where we ended up. I mean, time ran out. In that previous, it looked like clear skies up ahead. It continued to look like clear skies up ahead, but those clouds were moving north as fast as we were. So we ended up here on the side of the road, And this is the circumstances of it. If you took any pictures during the eclipse with your cell phone, the GPS map annotations on the photos will tell you where you were. That's how I figured out where I was. It was very hard to identify this, but just by looking at Google Maps. So we had, if we'd stayed put 4 minutes 26 seconds, we actually got 3 minutes 16. And if you notice the times here, the planned and the actual, the delay, in the video that I'm about to show, you'll hear me calling out times and telling people things are about to happen and hearing beeping of my watch going off. They're all off by this time. I didn't, at the time, didn't think about it. You know, the cliche is that for total eclipses, you lose at least 20 IQ points. And that's, I think, actually true, even in the lead up to it, not just during totality. So this is just going to be the first part of totality, because what you're going to see, it's a little bit of white light, then you see the filters kick in, the diffraction grading click in preparation for getting that flash spectrum at the beginning, and then you'll see what happens after that. Because there's some images of the spectrum that you'll see
across the land.
Yeah, can you hear the voice?
It sounds good.
Good.
That sure feels different, that's for sure.
The bugs are out.
It's very cool. Some of those people turn their lights off.
Oh no.
Oh.
It's still there.
It's still there.
1:31.
Oh,
More minutes. Look at the horizon, guys. Look off to the west. See that shadow?
Wait, I see it. Do you see the shadow?
Oh yeah, well, all that dark is the shadow coming.
Ooh, it's getting really dark. I guess it's darkest night.
Yeah, it's like having the full moon now. This is second contact, right? Just about now. Here comes the shadow.
It does feel really, I'm kind of glad we're out in a place like this because
we're going to see it.
We're going to see it come through.
Here comes the shadow.
Oh, wow.
Ooh.
Look what you can. Look out there.
Look that way.
Look behind you for a second, real quick, and then look back. Yeah, look to the west.
Oh, yeah.
Here it comes.
This is so pretty.
Cool.
Oh, wow.
Lights on. There, okay. It's trying to come out of that cloud.
Oh, there
it comes. That's, you can use your, you can use your binoculars.
That is so pretty.
Where am I soon?
Oh, that's lovely. Lovely.
Wow.
Oh.
It's not focused, Bob.
Huh?
That's okay. You got the picture.
No, this is focused. I never did focus.
The real toy right there.
We saw it. We did it.
Oh, God, look at it. I can really look at it, too.
Yeah. Oh, look at the horizon now. See that color? That's from the chromosphere.
I tell you, I love it with all these clouds.
Oh, this is great.
Since beginning to see.
I mean, we're not seeing huge coronal spikes or anything. There's some nice prominences.
The stars are coming out, and look, it's sunset.
Oh, are you seeing the stars?
All around.
There, look. Oh, what is that, Jupiter or something?
Jupiter is over behind us. Venus is in here somewhere. Ignore them. Okay, I think that's mid-eclipse. That was 2 minutes. 2 minutes to go.
I mean, that's so...
And I want to do this.
Oh, I know.
So, I love it when I say ignore this. Ignore looking at the stars.
Across the land.
Oops, I didn't mean to do that. Stop. So at mid-eclipse, when it first came out of the clouds, we saw the spectrum, and this is a frame taken from that. And you can see that some prominences, you can actually see the spectra of the prominences. This gives you, if the if it had worked properly to film the flash spectrum, we would have seen all sorts of lines in here from the chromosphere. This is for me, is a souvenir of what might have been. The clouds going by, this is some image processing I did where I took 100 frames with the clouds and averaged them so that the clouds averaged out. I added 1 frame to get the prominences and got a composite that looked like this. And I was surprised, actually rather pleased. And this is just a snapshot. It's a souvenir. It's nothing like the in clear skies could have been done. But you can see some detail in the inner corona, and you can see the prominences. It's interesting that the prominence down here that just barely shows, because we were so far off to the edge of totality, is not nearly as dramatic as some of the other pictures that you'll see of it elsewhere. And this is probably my favorite picture. This is my grandson Max's picture of the partial phase. He was not very successful with totality, but as a first attempt, it was great to have him do this. This was his second eclipse. Some of the voices you heard, one was my sister. It was her first eclipse, and my grandson Max, it was his 4th. It was my 15th. Harold and Allison, whose voices you didn't hear, it was their first eclipse. The family decision back at Rio Frio was for those folks who had not seen an eclipse to get in the car to increase their odds. And the folks back at Rio Frio saw it get very dark and very light again, but they never saw totality. And this is the quote that I've used many times. In any event, the main point of an eclipse expedition is the fun, challenge, exotic location, and so on. And in the same theme as some of the other presentations, this is the happy group. This is my grandson. That's my sister. That's me. These 2 folks are friends, eclipse friends that we've known for 20 years. We met on a cruise ship, on an eclipse cruise. They live up in Canada. They saw the eclipse up the road. This is their Tesla, very close to the Tesla charging station, which is as far as they got north that day. And then it was off to San Antonio. And this hotel, the St. Anthony, James Flood Walker was my great-grandfather. And we stayed in that hotel. And in the background, that's the same hotel in the foreground. In the background is the Maverick Hotel, Sam Maverick who made his fortune by claiming all the unbranded cows in Texas. My great-grandmother is descendant of his. And this is the courthouse in San Antonio where Judge Robert Barkley Minor was a judge from in the early 1900s. So it was very much a family reunion. And one of the main reasons we chose Texas and didn't move very far from it is because we wanted to spend some time in San Antonio. And if you're ever in that part of the world, in Lockhart, which is closer to Austin than San Antonio, is the very best barbecue in all of Texas. And that's the pit with the open flames that you walk by as you go to the counter to pick up your order. That's it.
Thank you so much, Bob. That was awesome.
Okay.
Just gonna change these around again.
And I'm going to.
Okay, Larry, we've got you up.
Oh, good evening. On our first experience for our very first eclipse, we drove up to Madras, Oregon. And as you see, we were in a, whoa, what's going, can we stop that? Can you go back?
Yeah, the other button there. I'll go ahead and run it.
Okay, that'd be good. This was at the football field in Madras, and we went up partially because for some reason we got a notice from the local observatory in Flagstaff that they're looking for volunteers. And so I'm thinking, why are we, being contacted? Because we live in Walnut Creek, but I guess we were made a donation once upon a time down there. They needed somebody to go up, so we decided we're going to go up to Madras and see the eclipse. So when we got there, we walked into the office and said, "Well, we're here. What do you need us to do?" And they looked around and said, "We got an important job for you." So we were assigned to make coffee for the staff. So they put us in the kitchen, and there was the old-fashioned percolators. They make 20 cups at a time. With two percolators. So we made coffee nonstop for 2.5 hours. And I don't know where that coffee was going, who was drinking it, but maybe they were selling it, whatever was going on. But we missed all the presentations that the astronomers were given.
Oh.
And so, after a while, they stopped coming for the coffee. I said, wait a minute, we better check our time and see what's going on with the eclipse. So we put everything down and ran out and joined the eclipse. So they had the tent set up, and there was about 300 or 400 people there, and it was a great time. There was the best part about seeing the eclipse is you're seeing people that you would never think that would enjoy watching eclipse. You would think, sometimes you walk down the street and you see somebody and I don't want to be on the same side of that street with that person. He's at the eclipse. And so it was really a lot of fun to see all different walks of life of people that enjoy the event. So in April, we went to Irving, Texas, and my nephew happened to live there. And so we said, oh, we're going to come by and see you and then see the eclipse. And he says, okay, that's fine. You can stay with us. And so we had purchased tickets to the Ross Perot Museum eclipse event. We did that in December. And as the eclipse got closer and closer to the date, the weather is, of course, getting cloudy and cloudy and cloudy. And so the day before the eclipse, we decided, let's go check out what the Ross Museum situation looked like. So we drove about 20 miles in an hour and a half and got to the Ross Museum. It is a gorgeous museum. So if you ever get a chance to go to the museum. And when we got there, we had these tickets for the next day for the eclipse. And we said, we're not driving back in this traffic, not with this bad weather that was predicted. So we talked to the admission people, and they allowed us to exchange our tickets that we purchased for the eclipse for the admission into the museum. So we spent, probably 6-7 hours at the museum looking at the fossil exhibits, the dinosaurs, astronomy exhibits, and so forth. And so the following day, we decided that we're going to look around for a place to check out the eclipse just, by chance. It happened 3 blocks away from my nephew's condo. They had in Irving, they had this star party. So it was only 3 blocks, and at 11 o'clock, it was still cloudy. We're looking out the window, so let's go over, check it out. They had food trucks and a band and stuff like that going on. So we decided to go, and by lo and behold, during the eclipse began, clouds cleared up. We got wonderful views of the eclipse, got a lot of expressions from the audience and screaming and shouting during totality, and that was a lot of fun. So the main event after the eclipse was the moon pie. These 2 gentlemen were cooking or making moon pies, and that's the biggest moon pie I've ever seen. So after totality, they carved up the moon pie, gave everybody a slice of the pie, and It was just a wonderful event. So thank you.
Thank you, Larry. That was great. Okay, we've got Jeff up next.
Nice magnetic holder. Okay, I'm going to be talking briefly about the eclipse last month, which was my first total eclipse. Here's one of my crummy photos, but it's what I have. I had seen previously, and there's been mention of, various 98, 99%. I think it was in 1998, or at least in the late 1990s. My wife and daughter and I had just arrived in Paris, and there was 98% solar eclipse in Paris. Well, just about anything's pretty cool to see in Paris. But it was still very, very interesting. Of course, it got dark. The street lights came on. The birds, I remember, started acting up and making an awful lot of noise. But I thought, sometime I'd like to see a total in my life. Well, after 2017, two of the other club members, Scott Huntsman, who you heard, and Gary Locke, they both were so excited in expressing what they saw in their trip to Oregon to see the eclipse there that it was like, I got to see one of these. And about 2 years ago, I happened to see there's going to be the eclipse in April of 2024, and I looked at the band of totality, and I noticed that it went kind of, if it didn't go right through Montreal, Quebec, it went real close to there. And at the time, my daughter and son-in-law were living in New York City, and they had met in Montreal, and I'd been there, and I thought, I love Montreal. I can drive up there. So this is going to happen. Well, then a little later, I heard the farther north you are, the better chance you're going to be clouded out, especially in April. But I thought, well, takes your chances. So decided that I'm going to go see that one. Well, last fall, my daughter and son-in-law decided we're moving to Canada from New York. And they moved to about an hour north of Toronto. And for business reasons, they now also have rented an apartment in Grand Island, New York, which is just across the border and just south of Niagara Falls, and also just north of Buffalo, New York, where the center line of totality ran. And I said, hey, I'm coming for the eclipse. And they said, well, cool, you can stay in our apartment. It's almost like camping out, but it's free. And I thought, well, that's great. I'm going to do this. So my wife and I planned a trip. We went to Ontario, and it was about supposed normal times. It's about a 2-hour drive to Grand Island. And I noticed the week before, when I'm looking at my iPhone and what the weather reports are for Grand Island the next week, it's cloudy. And I'm thinking, well, maybe this isn't going to work out. And 2 days after we arrived in Ontario, it snowed, which is not at all uncommon for early April in Ontario, pretty common. But so then I started thinking, well, let's just keep watching the weather. And then we started hearing things about how, well, there's going to be about 1 million people in the Niagara Falls area. And the mayor saying, if you don't need to come, don't come. We're going to have plenty of people. And I'm thinking, well, I got to cross the border and this and that. And my son-in-law, who's Canadian, told me, here's the border crossing you want to use. Nobody knows about this one. It won't be crowded. But I looked at the map of totality in the band, and I knew I didn't have to leave Canada if I didn't need to. Well, as we got closer to the 8th, the weather reports for Grand Island seemed to deteriorate further and further. And I started looking at all kinds of different weather sites and so on. And I noted that staying in Canada looked like it potentially was a little bit better. And so we decided instead of going to Grand Island, where now it's saying it's supposed to rain around the time of totality, we'll head for Hamilton, Ontario, which was about, in normal times, about an hour and a half drive from where my daughter and son-in-law live, north of Toronto. And so the morning of totality, my wife and I set off, and we had enough time, we thought, to get to Hamilton. But I decided, well, I want to be sure. So my foot was a little heavy on the gas pedal, despite the signs along the side of the highway that said, if you exceed the speed limit by more than 50 kilometers an hour, the fine is $10,000. Now, 50 kilometers an hour, if you're exceeding the speed limit, you deserve a fine. So I wasn't about to go that fast, but I was going over the speed limit along with most of the people. And then, so we're heading south, and we're noticing that off towards the southwest in the direction where we're going, the clouds are becoming less and less, and the sky's better. And so we then turned off from heading due south and headed off towards the southwest. And the clouds are getting thinner and thinner. They're kind of getting to be just high cirrus clouds, but still clouds. And we're driving along, and I'm noting there's electronic signs every couple of kilometers that say, do not stop on the highway during the eclipse. You will be fined. And, you know, Canadians are pretty polite people, so they weren't messing around for that, is what I was thinking. But I'm wondering, you know, if people all stop, I'm going to stop too. Well, shortly thereafter, traffic started to slow down and come to a stop. And we're headed for Hamilton, Ontario, which I knew was in the zone of totality. And I'm remembering the zone of totality in my head. Unfortunately, didn't print it out. But so I'm thinking, where can we go? Where can we go? We still need to head southwest. And about that time, my wife said, you know, I really got to go to the bathroom. And I know when she says that, she's serious. And I also know another thing is that, and she's collected a lot of data points over the years, is that she'd much rather go to the bathroom at the side of the road than in a filthy public restroom, which she says there's plenty of. And so the next exit, I get off and we take off down this road, and the traffic's getting a little heavier. And I'm noticing a lot of cars are just pulled over to the shoulder of the road. It's just a 2-lane road. And I see an open spot, so I pull in there and I said, how about here? She goes, I can't go to the bathroom here. Look, basically we're in somebody's front yard. So I said, okay, well, you're right. So I pulled back out into traffic carefully, and down the road a little bit farther, I noticed the parking lot for a commercial nursery. And I said, maybe we can find an obscure corner of this and you'll have it all to yourself. And we did. We found one off in the far corner, and she took care of what she needed to take care of. And by then it was about 5 minutes till totality. And I was just hoping that we had got into the zone. I wasn't totally sure. I was going from memory. So we got out of the car, got on our Eclipse glasses, and I had my iPhone, and I had a filter that you attached with Velcro over the camera. And I started, this is some of the pictures I took, and you could see it's not the best quality, especially compared to, I know some of the members are really, really good at astrophotography. But with an iPhone through some still high clouds, and it was incredibly windy too. So holding it steady wasn't easy. But this is approaching totality. And another one approaching totality, and that's a lot of the clouds you're seeing. And then totality came, and I was so overwhelmed. The only word I could get out of my mouth first was, wow. And my wife says, what? And I kind of tried to get it out, and I said, totality, totality. And so she looked up at it, and her first word was, wow. as well. And it turned out we had made it into the zone of totality by maybe 100 or 200 meters, just by luck. And we watched it awestruck. My wife turned to me and she said, "You were right. Total is way better than 98%. And I don't think it was as long as, it was in some places, just because we were so close to the edge, but it was still awe-inspiring. I got a couple more. That's after totality. And then one other one after totality. And about 10 minutes later, wow, this is what the sky cleared up, and then it just got cloudy as could be. And we lucked out. And I asked, when we got back to my daughter's north of Toronto, I asked, "Did you guys see it?" Because I had brought Eclipse glasses for everybody, including our 9-month-old granddaughter, who did not try them on. But they said, "No, it was so cloudy here, you couldn't see anything." And they were supposed to be able to see about 97, 98%. But bottom line is, my first total eclipse, I'm definitely hooked. Scott Huntsman, who you heard earlier, he mentioned the one in 2045 in Reading. He and I and our other friend Gary probably were going to try and go to that. We'll be in our 90s, but we're going to hang in there. We've lined up a driver who's 5 years younger because of that. And the other thing I'm hoping for is that self-driving cars will be a reality. So thank you.
Fantastic. I'm so glad you made it into the path. That was a wonderful story. Okay, we've got John up next.
Hi, I'm John Collett, and I missed the April 8th eclipse, but I've been planning for that, really looking forward to it, planning for over a year. And in the months coming up to it, I got 3 cameras ready to take. I got wide angle, super telephoto and everything. But I bought a house, and we closed about a week before, and I spent the week of the eclipse working with contractors. So I missed that. But I booked a VRBO in Fredericksburg and got all the flights and so on about a year in advance. So I canceled those. But a friend of mine did go on the trip, and she unfortunately didn't see squat because of the weather. And it was pretty bad in Fredericksburg, but missed that one. So what I will tell you about is my experience in 2017. August 21st, I went to Baker City in Oregon for the total eclipse. Yeah, shown on the map here. And it was pretty amazing. We booked that well in advance too. All the hotels fill up months before. And then we drove south from Baker City closer to totality. So we drove about an hour. I think this is Interstate 84, just to the right of Baker City, going right next to it. And the experience, that was my first eclipse, and my own eclipse, total eclipse. But the experience other people have said is really moving. I was just totally astonished. It was very emotional and just a wonderful experience. And as you watch the moon going across the face of the sun, you realize there's all this celestial mechanics overhead, and how spectacular that is. And by implication, you're seeing it going on in the immediate solar system, but it's going on in the whole universe as well. And I found it just astonishing. So I am hooked, and I will go to another one. But I love photography as well as astronomy. And my goal in the 2017 eclipse was to get a montage to remind myself of what it's like as the moon slides across the sun. And you see the different phases then in totality. So this is in totality. It's hard to see here, but there is a little bit of pink. I think it didn't show well in this particular photograph. But this is with a 24mm lens, so this is, you know, cropped and zoomed in. As I said, my goal is to get the montage. You'll see that a little later. So totality, you could see a little bit of the corona there. And third contact here as the moon is slipping to the lower left here and exposing the diamond ring effect. Oh, that was pretty nice. And then in totality, in 2017, there was this spectacular chevron shape in the corona. So that was beautiful to see. And just standing under this, looking up at it, I kept thinking Arthur Koestler's book, Darkness at Noon, and the history behind astronomy, particularly solar system astronomy. So that was beautiful. So this is the full view of that 24mm camera. So you can see the horizon down below, and there's that corona, full corona in totality. And then my goal was to generate the next image. This one. Okay, so this shows the almost the total duration of the eclipse. I shut down early, but from the lower left, you see the moon. The sun is rising to the upper right, and the moon is sliding to the left across the face of the sun. And I just love creating this in Photoshop afterwards. It gets harder to do these things in Photoshop because they keep upgrading the software, so that when you try to just capture the partial phases of the eclipse, it doesn't do it so cleanly as it used to do it. Anyway, that's my story from my eclipse experience.
And that last image is very beautiful. Just reminds me of that eclipse so much. Thank you. Okay, we have Rick. He's joining us via Zoom. So give me just a minute to switch around again.
Hi, Tara. Can you hear me?
Oh, we can. Let me find you.
Okay, good. It'll take me just a second to load the images here.
There are lemons in the back.
Okay, so
organic lemons and kumquats. All you Zoomers need to come on over.
okay, hopefully these are loading in the background. And now, can you all see this?
We can.
Okay, success. It's working. I thought I'd start out with something other than an eclipse photo. I've got a couple of those to share, but I wanted to share this one. This is actually the first ever aurora I have ever seen. And I actually owe it to Tara. And she'll probably remember this. We were up at the public viewing night up on Mount Diablo. And I was there with a couple of friends. And we were there to try to photograph the aurora, but also to see the sunset and photograph that. And as we were looking out west at a beautiful sunset from Mount Diablo, Tara came up and she said, "What are you guys doing?" And I said, "Well, we're waiting for the aurora." And she says, "Well, you know, you got to look towards the north." And we were looking west, so that was our a cue to pack everything up and get moving post haste. So I had been taking a shot of the sunset, and the camera was set for a 2.5 second exposure. And I simply plopped it down on the tripod, didn't even extend the legs, just kind of like a giant monopod. And I took a picture towards the north just to see if I could see that red glow. And sure enough, it was there. And you know, I think Tara also mentioned if you go around to the other side of the shrubbery there, towards that antenna tower, you get a more unobstructed view. And by the time we did that, that was it. That's all she wrote. The aurora, as far as we could see, was over. So thank you, Tara. And I'm glad we were able to get this one image of the aurora from Mount Diablo.
And just to interject, that was on the 11th, the day after the big storm. And I verified it with several sources that on our public astronomy night, there was a 5-minute aurora and it was done after that. One big flare.
Well, I was stoked that I was able to get this. However, I'm not quite ready to check it off my bucket list as having seen an aurora. So still waiting for the big show. So moving on to solar eclipses. My first solar eclipse, and for Levon as well and the family here, was in 2017, and we were in Glendo, Wyoming. And like you've heard before, it was fairly easy to get to the location. It took us about 3 hours coming from Estes Park, Colorado, to drive into Glendo. And when we were there, we found out that we were amongst thousands, maybe tens of thousands of people who had the same idea. And oddly enough, for that eclipse, we didn't even think about the weather. It was not even a moment's thought. It was, we knew we were going, we knew the eclipse was going to be there, and we knew we were going to see something special. So this is one image of that eclipse. This one is full of lens flare, but I absolutely love it. It's the diamond ring effect with lens flare. And I saw that, and that was definitely a keeper. Enjoyed that. I was using a Canon 70D, just a APS-C camera with its kit zoom lens, and didn't really know what I was doing. I had my fingers crossed a lot, but it kind of worked out in the end. And this is the picture of totality. And you know, as you've heard several times tonight, it's almost a religious experience. It was my first eclipse, and I'll tell you, when you're actually witnessing totality, it's almost like time stops, and it was just an amazing event. And I think we had about 2 minutes of totality in Glendo, which was right on the center line of the eclipse. So anyway, as you've heard before, my first eclipse, and I was hooked. So when the 2024 April eclipse came around, we were ready to go. And we were, of course, checking everything, including weather charts and that sort of thing. And we came to the conclusion that the best place to go for that eclipse for us would be to go to Texas. And as far as close as we could get to the center line. And so we actually had a hotel on the outskirts of the city, right on, I think it was Highway 10. We were going to actually shoot the eclipse or view it and try to photograph it from our hotel parking lot, which would have given us about 2.5 minutes of totality. But if we drove an hour kind of northwest, we would be on the center line in a little place called Kerrville. And Kerrville, Texas, it caught a lot of press. As a matter of fact, some of the articles that appeared in the news feed that I follow, they were projecting 500,000 people descending from San Antonio going to Kerrville. And so that's why we were planning just to stay in the parking lot. But as things progressed, there was nothing but clouds where we were, and we figured, well, let's go for broke, and we headed off to Kerrville. And while we were on our way to Kerrville, we were going to connect up with some mutual friends who were staying at a B&B, an Airbnb. And the host had prepared this really neat display, and they had T-shirts, commemorating the event from Kerrville, and that really cool Oreo Eclipse platter right there, which I'm sorry to say I wasn't able to snag one of those cookies, but I did get a picture. So everything started out with the promise of seeing a total eclipse. It was kind of cloudy, and I had my camera set up on a tracking mount, and I was using a program called Eclipse Orchestrator so that I could actually sit back and enjoy the eclipse. Well, unbeknownst to me, Eclipse Orchestrator works really well if there are no clouds. But if there are clouds, you have to make modifications for that. So I was constantly tweaking with the software, and that's really what I tried to avoid. To give you an idea, this is what C1 just into the partial phase of the eclipse. And normally with a solar filter, you're taking an image at about a 400th of a second with a solar filter on. These were in the quarter seconds to full 1, 2, or 3 seconds to try to penetrate those clouds. This is another example. And so far we're thinking that things are going to clear up. By the way, this is what the setup looked like. We're out in the street, and you can see the cloud cover very much like you've seen in previous presentations. And, oh, there I am. Okay, that's me. I've got my glasses on and thoroughly getting ready to enjoy the totality. And this is getting close, and that's a nice sharp crescent, but you can also see the clouds that are drifting over the crescent there. Here's another example of our motley crew there, and that's my wife, Lavon, on the left there, and that's my camera setup, which is a tracking mount with a 600 millimeter lens, shooting at 500 millimeters. I had volunteered to be part of this Eclipse mega movie project, as I had participated in 2017 and thought it'd be fun to do it again. So I was using the recommended setup and exposure that they had recommended. They wanted to try to take some scientific recordings of the corona. And these are our friends, David and Lynn Bricks. And David was with me up at Mount Diablo when we were looking at those beautiful sunsets up there. And you may want to notice his tripod and camera setup and that vertical pole that's right in back. Well, getting close to totality. This is about 3 minutes from totality, and you can see the clouds are kind of parting a little bit. We were somewhat encouraged. This is a cell phone image, and so we were thinking, well, there may be a hole and it may work out yet. Well, this is right at totality, or just seconds before, and this is through the telephoto at 500 millimeters. So this is my cloud totality image, and that's it. So, but at any rate, so from this image right here until almost an hour later, the clouds were so thick I couldn't even get partials. Now, what's kind of interesting here, and I hadn't really thought about this, you notice that really sharp shadow on the sidewalk. That's because during totality, it really got dark. And the street light, that vertical pole, the street light came on, and my friend had to quickly pick up his tripod and move it so as not to shoot right into the overhead light. What's also interesting, in the background, you can probably hear my granddaughter crying, but that's another story. But in the background on this image, the lights on people's houses came on as well. Just that's how dark things got so quickly. And this is after totality. This is 1 hour after this is what's C3. But it's my favorite image of the whole collection because it's an image that was a 3-second image, 3.2 seconds, to capture this through very, very thick cloud layer. But I just like the striations and how this image looks. Like it so much, actually, I used it as the face on my watch. Now, Kerrville, as I mentioned, was supposed to be a really big deal. And as such, NASA set up a information booth in Kerrville. In fact, there was a lot of booths, a lot of things going on in the park downtown. And this is myself and David Bricks in Kerrville there. we had a great time. We were able to go to the NASA table and we would do some, it's like a NASA photo booth. So here we are. And while you probably can't see this, we were probably the last people going through there, and they said, "Hey, you guys want to take the props?" And so they gave them to us. So we'll have to save that for some public outreach event. And then one last shot. This is what I was able to stitch together with the partials. And first time I'd ever used Photoshop to put partials together like this. And I have to tip my hat to a very competent YouTuber and who showed me how to do it, showed a lot of people how to do it, apparently. And I think that is it.
Awesome story. Thank you, Rick. All right, for next we have Renee Gandolfi. And let me remember.
Everybody needs to give her a big hand for doing all this and making it work. So I was able to see the aurora. This is from Castro Valley. And my partner and I drove all around from about 8:30 at night up to the Chabot Observatory. No, we didn't have a good north view, all over Oakland, and eventually got back to Lake Chabot, which is around the corner from where I live. And we're looking to the north and we're saying, maybe. And so I went up at the top of the hill just above my house, and we're standing there, and we thought we saw this light. Which one's we saw that light there, and we thought it was from maybe a light behind a tree, and then it moved over. And we said, no, that's not light. And then we got this, and it was all about 5 minutes, and then it was over. So what I want to do is talk a little bit about eclipses before we talk about my experiences. A lot of people here understand all of it, but I brought up the concept of the sorrows a couple of times. And I was introduced to that by a friend of mine who told me about the first eclipse I went to and how it was the mighty 136 because it was the longest of the sorrows. So, don't like me. So where does eclipse come from? It comes from the Greek, which means fails to appear or it gets left out, and this feeling of abandonment. And when you do an eclipse that's like 6 minutes, you can get the feeling like, oh my God, the gods have abandoned us. We're all going to die. So Pink Floyd had a good song for it, which was If Your Head Explodes. I guess the audio didn't show on that. So types of eclipses, you've got lunar and solar. This is the geometry of it. You've got to end up in the shadow. You've got the umbra and the penumbra. Penumbra means you're going to get a partial. Umbra means you're going to get a total. And for the lunar, what'll happen is, solar, if you end up in what's called the anti-umbra, you get an annular eclipse. So it has to do with geometry. Why do we get solar eclipses at all? For one, the reason is because of an incredible perfect celestial geometry for us living in this epoch. The moon, what was that?
I'm going to pause real quick. I'm not sure we're sharing on Zoom.
What do we got? You lose something?
There you go. I apologize.
Current slide. Over to from current slide. Right there. That should give it to you. Yeah. So
sorry about that.
It turns out that the moon is 400 times smaller, but 400 times closer. And so it perfectly covers the sun when it ends up between us and the sun. Geologically speaking, because if you were here on Earth 300 million years ago, when the moon was still closer to us, we would always have total eclipses without annulars. And if you hang around long enough and come back a billion years from now, we will no longer have total eclipses because the sun will be the moon will be further from the Earth. So we're really lucky to be here now. Terry, you want to just advance it for me? So why do you get partials, annulars, and total? Why isn't it always a total eclipse? Well, the moon's orbit is not circular. So sometimes it's closer to us, sometimes it's further from us. So you don't get that perfect geometry other than line of sight, but you don't get it covering the moon. Next one. And this is a kind of a cool little video showing you the orbit of the moon and how you notice that it is not circular. It's slightly elliptical, and it also moves around in its position around the Earth. So that changes how our eclipses look. Why don't we get an eclipse every 2 weeks? Why don't we get one every new moon? Well, it turns out that the moon's orbit is tilted to the Earth. And so when we have a full moon, but we're in line with that orbit, we can have an eclipse. And when we're off that orbit, we can't have an eclipse because you're going to have the shadow missing the Earth. Way back in the 1700s, people were starting to figure this out, at least what the geometry was. And here's a perfect diagram of it. And these are called the nodes, where it lines up here, and that node moves around over time. So that should, yeah, will it animate? Hope so. Just hit a button.
Yeah. That one.
Nope. Yeah.
All right.
Will it work?
Oh, here.
Yeah. Come.
Let's move this out.
Oh, well. Shall we skip it? Or you want to try to get it?
Try one more time. Cannot play.
Okay. No cigar.
Thank you, Power.
Unfortunately, what the diagram would have given you is given you the nice circular, and then it would have changed the orientation, and you'd have seen how the moon's orbit is tilted to us. So why are the eclipses in different tracks? Why did we have one come across the U.S. from Oregon coming down to South Carolina in 2017, and then just last month we had one coming up from Texas? So they're coming in all over the place. And again, it has to do with things aren't circular. And we're at tilted orbits, and we're moving, and those orbits and precess around. So what turns out is we have eclipse seasons about every 6 months. And what will happen is when that time between two new moons or two full moons, and is if you take 223 of those, it works out to be 6,585.32 days. And then if you take the solar days and run out eclipse years, the nodes repeat. And so what happens is eclipses happen in families. Oh, go ahead. And this was kind of figured out by the Babylonians, where they could say, we're seeing this repeated pattern of 223 lunar months. For them, their calendar was lunar. The Greeks actually had it in the, how do you pronounce it, Antikythera mechanism. Next one. And this was dredged up from the, I think, the Ionian Sea, and it's this amazing clock that calculates celestial things that the Greeks put together. Next one. So in 1686, Edmund Halley, probably heard his name somewhere along the line, comes up with using the Babylonian word sorrow, which is that repeating cycle. And he said, we can tell eclipses happen in these patterns, and I'm going to name it the Saros. And so eclipses now are dated by their Saros. So what will happen is, in a Saros, in that series, the eclipse will start as a partial, either at the North Pole or the South Pole. Then the next one in the series is slightly further up. And the next one in the series is slightly further up or down, depending on whether it's ascending node of the moon or descending node. So you'll go from a partial to finally totals and then partials over the years. Every eclipse in a Saros is 18 years apart. So this is the Saros 136 that started in Antarctica. And over the years, every 18 years, it moves up. Patterns pretty similar each next eclipse. Eventually, the Saros ends and we'll never have Saros 136 again. There'll be some new ones. This is the Saros 136, and that's the eclipse in 1991. That was a 6.5-minute eclipse that came across Baja, and that was the one I think somebody saw off of in a cruise ship off of Mazatlan. In 2027, this same Saros, 36 years later, two cycles later, is going to come right across Egypt, and we're going to have a total eclipse of the sun at Luxor. So you don't have to wait to 2045. You just want to go to Egypt in 2027. And you'll get a long eclipse. There it is. This is 145. This is the one we just had in the US. In 1999, it came across Europe. So these are my eclipses and my journey through the Saroses. My first one I mentioned last meeting was in Oregon in 1979. I was in veterinary school. A friend of mine from undergraduate contacted me and said, don't miss this eclipse, and sent me the map of the track. It's the middle of February. I'm in school. What the hell? I'll just drive up to Oregon in the rain and hopefully see an eclipse, because I'd never seen one. This was the eclipse track coming out just through Oregon, Wyoming, and then zoom up to the Arctic Circle. This was the weather satellite photograph of the eclipse. You can see the shadow of the moon. This is Baja down here. So I'm up there. That is where I was. God said, you may see this eclipse. Everybody else didn't, and stuff. What Marnie said earlier was my experience here was religious. I saw the shadow of the moon coming across the Cascades, and to me it was the hand of God. And then when I looked up as we were coming into second contact, the moon stopped being a flat object and became a three-dimensional big piece of rock moving around the Earth. totally changed the perspective of how I looked at this. So, as I said, those are the two places. This is before the eclipse. This was the light and the shadow coming at us, and that was through handheld Mamiya Secor. Next one was in La Paz in 91. This is the Long Saros 136. You can see how big that shadow is. I didn't include a photograph there, but I will tell you, if you go to eclipses, tell your friends turn the flash off your cameras, because when you try to take a picture during the totality, you lose your vision, because a friend blinded me. In the Caribbean, we were on a cruise ship, the Rindam. Captain sailed flank speed all night, 500 kilometers to put us dead center. This is a perfect place to see shadow bands, a nice big flat white area just before totality, just after totality. There are ripples in this because of atmospheric effects on the very sharp light. There was a prediction based on the magnetic field lines that were seen or registered the day before the eclipse, and an astronomer put out this drawing, and that was the eclipse. And so it was a really good prediction of it. That was one of my photos. That was my favorite. Austria in 1999. I was right there. This is what I got. And so, as Marnie said, one of the reasons you do eclipses is to go to places that you'd like to be in. We turned to each other and said, well, we're in Austria. Next one was in Zimbabwe. Wonderful place. This was the outhouse that they put up for us. This is Robert Mugabe, the ruler of Zimbabwe at the time, and his family. And notice that even an African ruler has this good sense to put on glasses before looking at the sun, unlike somebody we know. We did a little safari, got to see some pretty cats. Next one was in Libya. And instead of being in Egypt, we got to go to Libya on a cruise ship out of Italy. We were the first Western cruise ship allowed into Libya, and we were in Tripoli, out in the desert, south of Tripoli. They set up this whole camp for us. Before that, we got to go to Egypt, so I got to see the pyramids, and I'm going to go in 2027 and see them again, but I want to see this other eclipse. Hopkinsville was the 2017 dead center line. Really cool animation of the shadow. That was the one photo that I got. And Tara, if we can get this video to play, it would be great.
Yeah, it says cannot play media.
It's not playing. If it was playing, she'd move. The reason I wanted to show this is I got the camera pointing toward the west. And so what happened in the camera was these clouds started to change color, and you could see how it darkened. And I guess we're not going to get it. So we did get to go to the Redstone test stand, which is where our first rocket was tested and where we now test big rockets. And this was at Huntsville before. Went to Tahiti on a cruise ship to try to see one. This was the day before. This is clouds. So the captain sailed us to here to try to get us out of clouds. This was just before totality, and he was sailing all over the place to try to get through the clouds. And this was totality. Oh, well, we're in Tahiti.
Nice.
And then Beaver, Utah was the annular eclipse that would just happened. That's through cell phone. Last one was Mazatlan, going for maximum time, clear skies, predicted less than 5% clouds, and we got clouds, but we did still get some totality. I now have 35 minutes of being in the shadow of the moon. Can't ever get to an hour. I'm not a little too old for that, but this is what's ahead. Spain, Egypt, and Australia. So you don't have to wait to 2045. Thanks.
All right. Thanks, you guys. I know we've run over a bit on time, so out of respect, I'm going to end the meeting now. I think running over is just a testament to you guys and all your amazing stories, and the connections we made tonight were wonderful. So thank you all for sharing. Ming, I know you're a last minute add-on. You wanted to show a video. If you have time to come to our next meeting and show it, that would be great. Okay, thank you guys. We're going to adjourn. Have a good night.
I wish we could get that video to play for you.